AITAH for taking down the friend who stabbed me in the back. My co-founder backstabbed me with fake logs and smear campaigns. Everyone believed him until the receipts proved the truth. I never thought my downfall would start with a handshake and a smile. "Don't worry, I've got your back," Eli said, palm heavy on my shoulder, eyes soft with a kind of brotherly pity that used to make me feel safe. We were standing in the boardroom of the startup I'd bled for, my drowsy little empire of coffee-stained wireframes, bug tracker nightmares, and the rare, radiant days when the product actually worked and our users loved us for it. I called the company Anchor because that's what I wanted to build. Something steady. Something no storm could pry loose. Here's the part that still haunts me. The handshake happened after he sold me out. I didn't know it yet, of course. I thought the meeting was about our Series B runway and a hiring freeze. Boring, survivable stuff. I didn't realize Eli had already slid a zippered folder across a different table. One with my projections, my contingency plans, my private notes about exec weaknesses I'd never said aloud. He'd labeled it risk assessment. That's the kind of betrayal it was. Neat, sensible, and fileable. Betrayal doesn't stab you right away. First, it makes the room colder. Then it makes your name heavier in other people's mouths. We've been best friends since freshman year dorms. He'd shown up on move-in day with a milk crate of philosophy books and a kettle. I brought a refurbished ThinkPad and a chip on my shoulder. He taught me how to drink tea without making a face. I taught him how to ship code before it was perfect. For a decade, we kept each other from drifting off the map. When Anchor was just a spreadsheet and an obsession, he was the first yes. He was the second co-founder on the paperwork. He was my emergency contact, and he was the one who handed my enemies a map of my blind spots. I didn't see it coming until the day after the handshake, when our HR lead, Priya, messaged me. "Heads up. Emergency board session at 4. Looks weird. Bring your laptop. And maybe your lawyer." "What?" I typed, heart already marching. Somebody filed an ethics concern. Not a joke. It wasn't a joke. It was a masterpiece. Anonymous allegations. That I'd manipulated revenue reporting, that I'd hidden a harassment complaint. I hadn't. Priya herself had closed it with the proper investigation. That I'd driven away 2 senior engineers by creating a culture of fear. There were screenshots of Slack messages that looked like me being casual about deadlines, except the timestamps didn't line up with the release calendar. There was a spreadsheet titled Vegas that supposedly showed I'd expensed a weekend bender to the company. I'd never been to Vegas. The only neon I see is from my monitor at 2 a.m. I did what any decent person does when a storm grabs your roof. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Then I looked closer and realized the screenshots weren't only edited, they were stitched. Little seams where a real line of text had been nudged into a different hour, a different channel, a different me. "Who?" asked Priya when we ducked into an empty conference room before the board session. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like someone learning to speak underwater. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The glass wall reflected Eli striding past, suit jacket unbuttoned, shirt so crisp it looked ironed by a sermon. He didn't glance in. He didn't have to. He knew I'd be there. "Breathe," Priya said. She used to be a yoga instructor. Sometimes I hated that about her, and sometimes I needed it. "You're going to sit. You're going to listen. You're going to ask for a digital forensics review." "Of what?" I asked, stalling, because the real question was galloping behind my teeth. "Why would he do this?" "Everything," she said. "Slack, Gmail, SSO logs, expense systems, MDM on all exec devices. And you're going to say it calmly." "I could do calm," I lied. Boardroom. Frosted glass, a bowl of stale mints, a view of the city that always looks better on investor decks. Our chair, Meredith, sat at the head, reading glasses low on her nose. The outside counsel had a stack of binders like a paper monolith. Eli sat to her right, not next to me, which would have been normal. He'd chosen optics. He'd chosen a side. Meredith started with throat clearing about fiduciary duty. Then she said my name in that way adults say your full legal name when they want to separate you from your soul. I asked for the forensics review. I asked to see the original complaint. I asked how anonymous tips had made it to the board without standard HR triage. I asked a lot of things. I kept my voice even. Eli kept his eyes on the binders as if looking at me might burn him. They suspended me, with pay pending review. That phrase always lands like a compliment that leaves a stain. I went home and sat on the floor and stared at the baseboard until my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You shouldn't have trusted him. K. I didn't know a K. I almost blocked it. Then a second text. A cropped photo of a conference table, the cheap wood grain of our smaller meeting room, plus the corner of a zippered black folder with the Anchor logo. The subject tab on a document. Risk assessment. Bottom corner. E. Moran. Eli's initials. I called the number. It rang twice and clicked to a voice I recognized, even though I couldn't place why. Keep this line short, the woman said. I'm not stupid. Who is this? Kristen, office manager. Formerly, right? She quit 3 weeks ago. She'd said she needed a softer place to land. I'd sent her flowers because that's what people do when they feel guilty about letting the office run them ragged. I saw him print it, she said, in a tone reserved for traffic reports and confessions. He was cautious, kept leaving take calls in the stairwell. Thought the cameras didn't cover the landing. They do. I saved the footage. Why? Because I like my next job, she said. And because you once put your credit card down for all of us when payroll was late. The little stuff sticks. The little stuff. The death of 1,000 kindnesses. Send it, I said, trying not to sound desperate. Please. Not to your company email, she said. Someone's sniffing. Check your personal. And do me a favor? Change your apartment lock. Don't ask. Just do it. The line went dead. I changed the lock that night. I didn't ask why. Fear had already moved into my living room with a duffel bag and a toothbrush. Kristen sent me 2 files, a video from a hallway camera and a PDF of the risk assessment. The video showed Eli stepping into the stairwell, checking his phone, looking up as if listening. He waited. Then a man in a charcoal coat entered from the access door that should have been locked from the outside. No face, just a scarf pulled high. They exchanged the black folder like a library book. The man in the coat slid a slim envelope the size of a check across. Eli didn't open it. He didn't count anything. He just slipped it into his jacket and left, jaw set like a man who had decided a long time ago that he was the hero of this story. I watched it 3 times, then again. On the 4th time, I noticed something I'd missed, a ring on the visitor's right hand, thick with a crest. I didn't recognize the crest, but I recognized the band. Meredith, our board chair, wore the same one. A family thing, an old money thing. I slept like a person glued to the bottom of a boat. In the morning, I found 3 emails in my personal inbox sent from a burner address. No text, just subject lines. 1. Slack _ exports _ 9_14.zip2. Expense _ csv.csv3. Salesforce _ deleted _ leads.json. I downloaded them onto an offline drive because I've watched enough crime shows to know you don't open a gift basket from your enemies without putting on gloves. The Slack export was huge. The expense CSV was boring until it wasn't. A series of taxi rides tagged to a car that wasn't mine, with notes that said Vegas client tour in a handwriting field I didn't recognize. We don't use handwriting in expense systems. We type, which meant someone had photo uploaded a note. The Salesforce file was the one that made my stomach knot. Deleted leads, all routed away from my pipeline. The leads had been messaged from a generic Gmail account, asking them to hold off until leadership changes clarified. He'd been kneecapping us from the inside. I called Priya. This is illegally obtained, she said after I finished, but admissible to start an internal review if we can replicate through proper access. What about the video? Same, but we can subpoena building security if this escalates. She took a breath. You're not going to like what I say now. Say it. Don't confront him. I laughed the kind of laugh that only makes sense if you're close to breaking. So I just let him keep cutting holes in the boat. We patch, quietly, she said. We make logs read like stories. And we find your narrator. My what? Someone who can say the things you can't without sounding defensive, she said. Someone with credibility to the board. I don't have anyone like that, I said, even though a face had already flickered through my mind. Martin, our first angel investor. He believed in me when Anchor was just sketches and hubris. But Martin had retired to a cabin with spotty Wi-Fi after his wife died. He was a ghost with a fishing rod now. Priya exhaled. Then we build one. The next days were a scavenger hunt through my own life. I didn't go to the office. I worked from my kitchen table with the curtains half closed like a cliche. I flagged discrepancies, wrote timelines, mapped Slack edits against deploy logs and calendar invites. It read like a thriller written by someone who hated my guts. 3 unexpected things happened in the middle of all that, and each one shifted the ground in a way I didn't see coming. First twist, a courier envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was my old university newspaper, yellowing, creased. A post-it on the front page. You were warned about him once. K. The circled article. Student government treasurer resigns after accounting irregularities. The treasurer's name, Eli Moran. 22 years old, earnest smile, prepared statement about learning opportunities. I called Kristen. You kept a college paper for a decade? I asked. No, she said. I found it in a drawer of his old desk when I was cleaning out storage. He saved it. People keep their origin stories close. Second twist, my brother, Darren, who doesn't do drama and doesn't do tech unless it's repairing a cranky espresso machine, called me while I was elbow deep in audit trails. Hey, he said, you know the coffee cart that parks outside Anchor? The guy told me your friend's been meeting a woman there every Tuesday. Older, expensive coat, walks like she owns the sidewalk. He sent me a photo he'd taken from across the street, because of course the barista had trained my brother to be a spy. The woman's coat was charcoal. Her right hand wore a crest ring. The caption Darren sent, isn't that your board person? Third twist, a Gmail draft appeared in my personal account with no sender and no from. Just a subject line. He changed your MFA. The body. Check your recovery codes. He added a backup device you don't own. Also, stop leaving hardware keys in drawers. There was an attached screenshot of my Okta settings. A new UB key registered 3 days ago. Location, Conference 4B. I didn't sleep that night. I drove to the office at 2 a.m., told the security guard I'd left an inhaler on my desk, and let the elevator hum me into the kind of courage you only find when the building is empty and the carpet smells like vacuum dust. Conference 4B is where I used to host weekly product reviews. It's also, apparently, where someone had registered a hardware key under my name. I turned on my phone flashlight and crawled beneath the credenza. There, taped to the underside with gaffer tape and equal parts arrogance, was a small metal key with a chipped blue cap. I took photos from 6 angles. I put on latex gloves because I'm ridiculous. I peeled the tape and slipped the key into a padded envelope I'd brought even though I hadn't known why I'd bring it. I left the room feeling like I'd picked up a snake by the wrong end. I stepped into the hallway and almost ran into someone. Jesus, I said too loud. The person lifted their hands. It was the night custodian, Renata, a woman whose face I knew only by the tilt of her chin when she listened to podcasts. Relax, she said, amused. You're not the first founder to haunt this place like a friendly poltergeist. Friendly is generous, I said. Do you ever see people here late at night who shouldn't be? Renata looked at me for a long, evaluating beat. Then she nodded toward the camera dome at the end of the hall. They don't check those often, she said. But I do. I like puzzles. She took out her phone, scrolled, and showed me a grainy clip from last Tuesday at 11:17 p.m. Eli in Conference 4B, alone, opening a small box and inserting something into a laptop port. A key glint. He smiled to himself in a way I recognized and now hated. Why do you have this? I whispered. Because I like my job quiet, she said. And because you once carried my vacuum down when the elevator broke. People think the little things don't matter. I wanted to hug her. I settled for thank you, like a prayer with its shoes on. I sent the video to Priya. She wrote back one word, finally. 2 mornings later, Meredith summoned me. Her assistant's email read like a trap wrapped in linen. We'd like to close out the review. 10 a.m., boardroom. I arrived early because I'm either compulsively polite or terrible at strategy. The room was already full. Meredith at the head, outside counsel to her left with the binders, Eli to her right, attention on his phone, Priya near the end with an expression like a seatbelt. There was also a man I didn't know, tall, silver hair, crest ring. Meredith started with a practice sigh. We've reviewed the materials. There are inconsistencies on both sides. However, given the Priya slid a folder across to the outside counsel. Before you however me, she said gently, we'd like to add new evidence to the record. Counsel raised an eyebrow. And this is security footage, Priya said, plus device logs, access changes to the CEO's MFA, and a chain of custody for a hardware key registered under his account without consent. Meredith's eyes sharpened. Eli's thumb froze above his phone screen. We'll need to pause, counsel said. Chain of custody? Priya nodded at me. I took out the padded envelope with the blue-capped key and placed it on the table like a relic. We'll also be calling building security to preserve stairwell footage from 3 weeks ago, Priya added. There appears to have been an unauthorized after-hours entry to a locked floor. Meredith looked at Eli. It was a small look. It opened a window in a sealed room. You're making a mistake, Eli said to me, finally meeting my eyes. He tried on the old voice, the one from freshman year and first funding rounds. This will blow up the company. I looked at the crest ring on the stranger's hand. I looked at Meredith's matching one. I thought about the envelope sized for a check. No, I said. You almost did. For the first time since this began, Eli looked unsure. Then he smiled a little, as if he remembered another card. Careful, he murmured. I know where the bodies are buried. I opened my laptop. I clicked a file Kristen had labeled Vegas and her son underscore Vegas, MOV. The screen filled with the tiny airport of a city that definitely wasn't Vegas, because the person in the foreground was me, timestamped the very weekend of the supposed expense bender presenting to a room of teachers at Code for Schools, a pro bono workshop I'd done every March for 4 years. Meredith watched herself appear in a photo on the wall behind me. She'd donated to the nonprofit. Her name was engraved on a plaque. Silence eats different when it's shifting sides. Let's take a recess, Meredith said, voice tight. We stepped into the hallway. Priya put a hand on my elbow the way you steady someone stepping off a moving walkway. You did good, she said. Don't gloat. We're not done. I nodded. My hand was shaking. I let them. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I picked up because that's who I am. Hello. A male voice, distorted slightly, like he was calling from a room with tile. If you want the rest of it, he said, check the storage locker in the basement. The one labeled holiday decorations. Bottom bin. Tape on the underside of the lid. Who is this? Someone who thought he'd get a promotion, the voice said. Someone who realized promotions don't protect you when sharks smell blood. The line clicked dead. I looked at Priya. Basement, I said. She glanced at the closed boardroom door, then at the elevator. 5 minutes, she said. We're ghosts. We were gone before our reflections caught up. The basement smelled like dust and plastic and a very specific brand of failed optimism. The locker labeled holiday decorations had a combination lock. Priya's eyebrows walked up her forehead. We're not cracking that. I crouched. The back of the lockbox was screwed into a particle board shelf. The screws were not particularly committed to their purpose. Hold this, I said, handing Priya my phone. I put my shoulder under the shelf, lifted a hair, and jiggled. The screws sighed. The box tilted. Something inside slid with a soft smack. Subtle, Priya said. We worked the box free, set it on the floor, and pried the lid. Inside, tangled tinsel, a strand of dead lights, 3 cracked ornaments, and, taped to the underside with gaffer tape, another zippered folder with the Anchor logo. The tab read, Contingency. I didn't open down there. I don't know why. Maybe because the basement felt like a place where secrets multiply. Maybe because I wanted to see Eli's face when his own Plan B auditioned for my team. We took the elevator up in silence. Outside the boardroom door, I paused. Ready? Priya asked. I wasn't. I opened the door anyway. If part 1 was the moment I realized the floor was moving, part 2 was when I learned the building was on wheels. We walked back into the boardroom, carrying a zippered folder stolen from a box of dead Christmas lights, like it was a bomb, with the timer politely covered by gift wrap. Meredith had reconvened everyone. Outside counsel shuffled papers with that quiet menace only lawyers and librarians have. Eli stared at a spot on the table, as if he could will himself into the wood. Priya nodded. I set contingency down like a plate at a dinner nobody wanted. Before we continue, I said, this was taped to the underside of a storage lid in the building basement locker marked holiday decorations. I'll let counsel open it to preserve chain of custody. The lawyer slipped on white cotton gloves they absolutely did not need, but made every syllable land harder, unzipped, and drew out a thin stack. The first page, a flowchart. If CEO removed interim, M. If board split solicit bridge from Vantage Capital, term sheet ready. If PR blowback seed narrative, founder cult professionalization. My name appeared only as a node labeled risk consumption. I've seen nicer descriptions on bug reports. The second page was worse. A checklist of reassignments for specific engineers and PMs, each with loyalty ratings. Next to Priya's name, replace. Next to mine, silence. Meredith's mouth thinned. Eli's jaw ticked. Where did you find this? Counsel asked again, pointedly at me. In a locked building locker, Priya answered, smoothly inserting herself. We'll provide the contact information for the anonymous tip. We'd also like building security to preserve basement cam footage. Meredith glanced at the silver-haired man with the crest ring. He kept his face neutral, the way a statue keeps its job. Recess extended. Meredith said, voice careful. 20 minutes. We filed out again. In the hall, Priya exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since founding. You realize what this means? She said. That interim, EM didn't stand for emergency? I said, it means there's a financing contingency already prepped, she said. Vantage Capital have been circling us since the series I finished. They'd wanted board control and preferred terms. We'd said no. Priya's mouth was a line. You don't draft a bridge term sheet without a sponsor. I looked through the glass at Meredith's ring twin. Do you know him? Vance Loring, she said. Partner at Vantage. Old money meets new greed. Why is he in our meeting? Because your friend didn't plan a betrayal, Priya said. He planned a transaction. My phone buzzed. Darren, you free? Come outside. The kind of text you don't ignore when your brother rarely uses punctuation. I need 5 minutes, I told Priya. Stairs. Outside, the air tasted like copy paper and rain. Darren leaned against a lamppost in a mechanic's jacket, which is exactly what he was wearing, because that's exactly who he is. He held up a small object between thumb and forefinger, a tile tracker, cheap and scuffed. I found it stuck under your back bumper, he said. Barista friend mentioned seeing a guy crouched behind your car last week. Thought it was a prank. My blood went cold in a way that made peripheral vision crisp. How'd you? Magnets and grease, he said. Wanting to toss it into a passing rideshare, so whoever's watching thinks you left town? I looked at him, this person who has never once asked me for a cap table or an explanation for my sleeplessness, and nearly used up my daily quota of tears. Yeah, I said. Make me a ghost. He grinned, flagged a car, and slipped the tracker onto the crossbeam by the rear plate like he'd been born doing spycraft. When the Uber rolled, so did my shadow. You doing okay? He asked, suddenly soft. Define okay. He nodded like he'd expected that. Call me if anyone follows you who shouldn't. I've got friends who like to lift heavy things in dark rooms. I'm not starting a militia, Darren. Then consider this a community watch. We bumped shoulders. He left. I went back in. The boardroom had shifted an inch to the left in the 20 minutes we were gone. Meredith's lips were pressed so tight they could have sliced paper. When moving to outside session, she said, Eli, remain. My name, Priya, wait outside. We left. Priya and I sat in reception like naughty teenagers waiting to get called back to explain ourselves to a principal who moonlights as a hedge fund. We could hear nothing through the glass. We could see everything. Eli gestured. Meredith stared. Vance the statue checked his watch with theatrical boredom. Counsel took notes like carving ticks in a bark. Let's assume worst case, Priya said, voice low. They remove you, pending the conclusion of review, and appoint him interim. He signs the bridge. Vantage gets control. He replaces me, reassigns loyalists, professionalizes the company by gutting its spine. And if best case? I asked. They pause decisions, bring in a third-party investigator, and lock both of you out of operations, she said. Vantage takes a smaller bite while they sort it out. Neither sounds like I get my job back. Not today, she said, but maybe soon. Between the building footage, the hardware key, the locker file, and Kristen's receipts, Meredith may decide she doesn't like being made a chump. As if cued, the boardroom door opened. Meredith's assistant gave us a practice neutral. Back in, we took our seats. Meredith stacked her papers. Here's where we are, she said. We are appointing an independent investigator to review the allegations, the provenance of documents, and any potential tampering. Translation: lawyers will eat for 3 months. Effective immediately, both my name and Eli are relieved of day-to-day authority and placed on administrative leave. The company will be led on an interim basis by a committee, CFO, Priya, and our VP of engineering. Eli flinched. I caught it and cherished it like a tiny citrus. Additionally, Meredith continued, no financing promises or term sheets will be entertained until the review concludes. Vantage Capital is welcome to remain neutral observers. They will not be participating in governance discussions going forward. Vance smiled the way a crocodile does when someone calls a log. And finally, she said, we are freezing administrative privileges across executive accounts pending a full audit. Outside counsel will coordinate device collection. It wasn't victory. It was oxygen. They dismissed us. In the hallway, Eli caught my arm. For a second, I thought he was going to say sorry. Instead, he leaned close, breath minty and expensive. You won't like what you find, he murmured. You think you're an avenging angel. You're just a different kind of liar. I stepped back like he was a snake practicing intimacy. Enjoy your interim committee, he added, and walked away. Priya watched him turn the corner. He's not scared enough, she said, which means he thinks he has another fuse burning. Then we find it, I said. We set up shop at my apartment because the office was now a museum with motion sensors. Renata, the night custodian with an eye for puzzles, stopped by on her way to a double shift and gave us a USB in a brown paper bag like a movie drug deal. Pulled the stairwell cams for the last month, she said. In conference 4B, I like you. Don't make me like you less. I'll carry your vacuum again, I promised. She winked and left. Priya plugged the USB into an air-gapped laptop like it was a specimen. We scrolled. We logged. We made a timeline that looked like a subway map designed by someone with grudges. 11:17 p.m., last Tuesday, Eli registering a hardware key. 3 weeks ago, the stairwell exchange with charcoal coat, Vance, and the envelope. Fridays at 6:55 a.m., Meredith entering early, alone, heading to the archive room. Tuesdays at noon, Eli outside by the coffee cart with a woman in an expensive coat. Meredith, hands never touching, words measured, cadence familiar. Not an affair, Priya said. They're orchestrating. Or he's reporting. We paused for breath sometime after midnight. My kitchen looked like a conspiracy theorist audition for a job in project management. In the middle of this, my phone chimed with an email from anonymity at TempMail, which is a very subtle address if you're hiding from toddlers. Subject, you're Vegas. Body, you're going to get asked by the investigator why there was a Vegas folder in the expense system at all. Search commit B4039 F9 in the expense approval repo. Someone merged an admin note featured 2 months ago. It writes over comments and keeps the old label. You'll need server logs to show who triggered it. Username pattern, SVC_admin_V. Don't stop at Eli. He's not the only one. Not the only one, I read aloud. Priya rubbed her temples. Of course he isn't. People rarely betray alone. They form choirs. I pulled the repo on a read-only mirror. Commit B4039 F9 was there, a small change masquerading as maintenance, titled Note Retention Patch. Diff looked innocuous until you realized it rewrote the admin note field without incrementing the audit version under a certain service account. That service account defaulted to SVC_admin_V. V for Vantage, I said. Or Vance, Priya said. Or vanilla villainy. We needed logs. We didn't have them, but the CFO on the interim committee did. I can ask her. Priya said, already typing. Not for you. For compliance. Within the hour, the CFO sent over a sanitized export. We matched timestamps. The SVC account edited for notes labeled Vegas, team offsite, client dinner, and recruiting drinks. Each edit came from an IP block registered to a WeWork downtown. Our office was not in a WeWork, but Vantage had a satellite there. We checked their public footprint. Suite number matched. I sat back. They came into our systems from a co-working space we don't use. Through the back door he left, Priya said, tapping the hardware key in its evidence bag. Clean. At 2 a.m., someone buzzed downstairs. I froze. Priya looked at me. I checked the camera. It was Kristen, standing with a messenger bag and an expression like a person who has seen a ghost and decided to outstare it. You did help. You owe me the world's largest coffee, she said, stepping in. Blackmail runs on caffeine. That a confession? A job description, she said, dropping the bag on the table. Here. Before I resigned, I did a little spring cleaning. Backups of backups. Calendar prints, badge swipes, a weirdly labeled USB found in Eli's desk, lab notes, which is adorable. Also, a media list I shouldn't have seen. She slid a sheet across. Headline, press targets, founder exit narrative. Outlets listed with reporters' names, preferred angles, and friendlies marked with stars. Next to 1 star, S. Sue. Tech Ledger. Owes Vance a favor. They were going to leak, Priya said. They already tried, Kristen said. I caught a DM to my personal from someone at Tech Ledger asking for comment on toxic culture at Anchor. Sources say founder is about to be pushed out. I ignored it, but someone will talk. Then we don't wait, I said. We flipped the script. Priya raised a brow. You're going to war with a journalistic machine that loves a founder downfall arc. I'm going to document, I said. And then I'm going to choose a narrator who doesn't owe Vance a vacation. The investigator? Eventually, I said. But investigators write for binders. We need someone who writes for people. Kristen snapped her fingers. Samira. Priya and I looked at her. Samira Ortiz, Kristen said. Independent reporter. Used to be at the Herald. Left when they wouldn't let her run a story on investor retaliation. She did that series on whistleblowers last year. Fair. Relentless. Hates easy narratives. You have her number? Everyone has her number, Kristen said. She leaves it under sources' chairs like a business card fairy. We stare at each other. Sometimes a plan walks into the room wearing sneakers and common sense. I'll email her, I said, but only after we lock down evidence and notify counsel. I'm not getting sued because my pride needed a profile. Priya nodded. You're learning. I had a good teacher, I said, and meant it. The next morning, the investigator arrived with a team of people whose suits probably had LinkedIn profiles. They set up in a conference room at a neutral downtown office like a makeshift embassy. The process was brutal in the way truth often is. Device imaging, Slack exports pulled from the server directly, not from anyone's personal archive, Okta logs, expense logs with raw rights. They interviewed me, Priya, Kristen, the CFO, the VP Young, 3 engineers, and, God help us, Darren, who insisted on bringing a thermos and calling the lead investigator chief like we were in an old cop show. Eli, we were told, declined to answer questions on advice of counsel. Meredith sat for an interview 2 hours long and emerged with the pallor of a person who has learned the word subpoena is not just for television. In the middle of all this, something unexpected happened. The friendly reporter at Tech Ledger, S. Sue, published a piece anyway. Headline, Anchor's founder suspended amid ethics review as sources cite culture of fear. Anonymous quotes. Half-truths. A photo of me with a posture that made me look like I was trying to apologize to gravity. Within an hour, Samira emailed from an address that looked like it had survived 1,000 FOIAs. Saw Tech Ledger. I've heard markedly different things from other sources. If you want your receipts in order, I'm not your PR. If you want the truth, I'll sit with it until it's heavy enough to stand on its own. Your call. I read it 3 times. I sent it to Priya. She wrote back, do it. But slow. I wrote to Samira. We'll share documents after they are in the investigator's hands. I won't burn the process to win a headline. If you're still interested after that, we'll talk. She replied 10 minutes later. Good answer. I'll wait. Meanwhile, watch your cloud permissions. Someone's poking your Google Drive trash every night around 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not me. I stared at that email until the words rearranged themselves into a curse. Who told you? I typed, then deleted. You don't question the weather when it tells you to bring an umbrella. We set alerts on Drive trash. At 3:07 a.m., a login pinged a deleted file called _old_board_notes_2019.docs. Source IP, a mobile carrier. Device fingerprint, iPhone 12, iOS 16.5. Browse agent flagged a custom content blocker plugin we'd seen once before on Eli's laptop. Idiot, Priya said. He's rummaging for his own narrative. We restored the doc. It wasn't much, minutes from a board off-site, boilerplate. But the metadata held gold. A comment thread from Meredith, for years old, tagged to a user Vance Carroll. Why do villains never rename the default? Discussing control structures in the event of founder incapacity. The structure they described looked eerily like the interim committee they'd just installed, minus Priya. Pre-baked coup kit, I said. The investigator took it all. They took so much I began to feel lighter out of spite. Then we hit a wall. The WeWork logs we needed, badge access to the suite Vantage used, were unavailable due to tenant privacy. The building footage of the stairwell exchange existed, but would require a court order unless the building was cooperating with a workplace safety investigation. In the service account, SV Singapore underservey flipped to SV Singapore admin overnight, as if someone in IT had felt a sudden chill and put a jacket on the crime. We need one more piece, Priya said. Something that ties Vance to the edits. Or ties Meredith to Vance to Eli. A line, not just dots. Or a recording, Kristen said. You know he loves the stairwell. I looked at her. She shrugged. Acoustics are good for secrets. I'm not a spy. I'm a product guy who knows how to draw boxes that make sense and ask questions that break features into fixable pieces. But the hardware key had taught me. The tracker had taught me. The way Vance watched the room, like a diner waiting for a check, had taught me. So we did something I would have judged a year ago. We baited the stairwell. Renata helped because of course she did. She put a note on the 10th floor door. Card reader malfunction. Use stairwell. She adjusted the cleaning schedule. We watched the cameras. Priya borrowed an audio recorder from the investigator for context. We tucked it behind the fire extinguisher in the landing. Legal in our state, as long as one party to the conversation consented, and I was consenting on behalf of my sanity. We waited. Nothing Monday. Nothing Tuesday morning. Tuesday at 11:57 a.m., just ahead of our now famous coffee cart o'clock, the stairwell door opened. Eli stepped in. A beat later, Vance slipped through the opposite door with the grace of a man born to side entrances. We watched on the feed as they stood almost back to back, far enough from the door crack that a passerby wouldn't see their mouths moving. The audio was tinny and perfect. Board won't move without Meredith, Vance said. She'll move, Eli said. I just have to put enough stink on him. The tech ledger piece, sloppy, Vance said. Control your friend. I didn't place it. A pause. Shoes scuffed. Vance's ring glinted like a smug star. Then place the next one, Vance said. Or give me something better than locker room gossip and Girl Scout treasure scandals. You said college wouldn't matter. Everything matters, Vance said. You're earnest and cheap, Eli. That's useful, but I can find useful anywhere. Silence like a trapdoor. I've been building the bridge committee, Eli said, hurried now. Without him, or with him tied down by process, we can push through. With you, Vance said. Eli's voice got smaller. With whoever you decide. And there it was, the shape of his delusion, popping like a soap bubble. Give me something that sticks, and I'll decide, Vance said. Otherwise, you're another interim. Footsteps. Doors. Gone. Priya hit stop on the recorder with trembling hands. Kristen covered her mouth. I stared at the screen like if I blinked, it would become a different story. You okay? Priya asked. I thought about freshman year tea and shared kettles and the way trust makes a room warm. I thought about folders sliding across tables and envelopes sliding back. I thought about the ways people sell themselves long before they sell you. I'm furious and fine, I said. Let's make them neither. We didn't send the audio to Samira. Not yet. We sent it to the investigator with a note from counsel. We sent a separate memo to the board about stairwell safety because apparently my pettiness can multitask. Meredith called a special session for Friday. The email used phrases like new developments and integrity of process, which is board speak for we caught the smell. Friday came like a tide. I wore the one suit that made me look like I'd remembered to eat breakfast. Priya wore armor in the shape of a blazer. Kristen texted a knife emoji, which I'm told is a form of support. In the boardroom, the audio played. Vance listened the way a man listens to his own obituary. Eli stared at the table, then at nothing, then at a point inside his own certainty where the floor was still firm. When it ended, Meredith folded her glasses. Mr. Loring, she said, Vantage Capital is excused from these proceedings, effective immediately. Vance stood. You don't have the runway to be righteous, he said. We have enough runway to avoid a crash with you at the controls, she said evenly. Security will see you out. He left without looking at Eli. That was the point. He never had. Meredith turned to Eli. For a second, I pitied him. Then I remember my name written as a risk consumption vector. We will be referring certain matters to law enforcement, she said to the room, not to him. Effective now, Eli, your access is terminated. HR will schedule a final compensation review. Counsel will contact you. Eli blinked like someone had switched the language on the captions. In my name, Meredith said, turning to me, you remain on leave until the investigator completes their report. You will not communicate with press or post on social media regarding this matter. A pause. I expect you to respect the process. It was fair and infuriating. It was the right thing and insufficient. It was also the first time her gaze at me wasn't a target. It was a measure. We adjourned. Outside, Priya hugged me once hard. Phase 1, she said. Don't spike the ball. I won't, I said, but I'm going to put it down gently where everyone can see it. That night, I wrote to Samira, we can talk. Off the record to start. I'll bring documents you can verify independently. No hero pieces, just the truth. She replied, tomorrow, 10 a.m. The cafe on 6th that smells like burned toast. You know the one. I did. Everyone did. It was the only place in the city where they confused drip for espresso and made both drinkable by accident. I slept for 2 hours and dreamed of stairwells. At 9:58 the next morning, Samira slid into the booth across from me. Hair up, pen poised like a weapon that had chosen ethics. She didn't hit record. She looked me in the eyes the way some people look at weather patterns. You know if you're lying, I'll know, she said, tone not unkind. I'm too tired to lie, I said. And I'm tired of being a story I don't recognize. Then tell me yours, she said. Start with a handshake. I told her. Between sips of coffee that tasted like penance and relief, I handed her documents that were already in the investigator's queue. Emails, logs, the stairwell audio transcript, not the file. Photos of the hardware key taped under a table, the folder taped under a lid, the commit diff, the WeWork IP matches, the text from the unknown number that had once told me to change my lock. I left out things that would break the process or break the law. I told her where to ask for the rest. She listened until the air got heavy with other people's choices. Then she said the thing I hadn't realized I needed. I'm not here to save you. I'm here to weigh you. So far, you're heavier than the gossip. On my way out, my phone buzzed again with a number I didn't know. I answered because apparently I had learned nothing. Still think you can beat a tide? A familiar voice said. Eli, caller ID fooled because he'd spoofed a number or because habit made me not block him. They like watching founders fall. You had your arc. This is mine. You were never the protagonist, I said, tired more than angry. You were a plot device with ambition. He laughed, mean and small. Check your mail, he said. Real mail. The line went dead. I opened my mailbox when I got home. Inside was a single envelope, no return address, thick paper like old money apologizing for being tacky. I opened it with a key I just used to change my lock. A single sheet. Cease and desist. From Vantage Capital LLP. Alleging I had unlawfully accessed proprietary communications and interfered with a pending transaction. At the bottom, a handwritten note in a neat, expensive hand. Enjoy your process. We enjoy ours. I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a tangerine. Then I called Priya, Samira, and our counsel in that order. We're past the handshakes, I said. They just sent me their teeth. 2 days after the Candy, TechLedger doubled down with a front-page feature. The cult of the founder at Anchor. Fear, favoritism, and faked wins. Pull quotes from anonymous engineers saying I threw laptops. My laptop is a 3-year-old ThinkPad with 2 stickers and 0 dents. A former contractor, alleging I manipulated revenue. We literally found the WeWork IP edits tied to SV. A photo of me mid-blink, so I looked half asleep and half guilty. The closer, sources say interim leadership is restoring professionalism. The sources were coordinated. I know because 5 minutes after the piece went live, 2 VC Twitter celebs shared it with the exact same sentence. Hard but necessary professionalization. Vance's PR fingerprints still on the glass. I shut my blinds and sat on the floor. It felt like grief, except the corpse was my name. Priya texted, "Do not respond." Investigator binder board. Breathe. Samira emailed, "I'm not running a counterpiece until I verify. Keep your powder dry." Fine. Powder dry. Heart on fire. Next morning, the interim committee, including Priya, announced an internal town hall. I wasn't invited. Suspended founders don't get the microphone. But I watched the Slack blow-by-blow like a fan outside a stadium. Highlights, lowlights, CFO. We're committed to transparency and stability. VP Young, corporate rain speak. Priya, there were serious lapses in judgment at the top. Anonymous question, are we done with founder worship? Priya, we're moving beyond personalities. My stomach dropped. Priya, my one steady line, sounded like she was softening the ground for the board to salt my name. Then my phone buzzed. Priya, private, you're going to see quotes. Trust me. Later that day, TechLedger updated their piece with a new block. Anchor HR lead, Priya S., acknowledged serious lapses at the top and praised interim professionalism. No mention of tampered logs, unauthorized hardware keys, WeWork IPs, Stairwell audio. Just enough phrasing to make it sound like HR was confirming their narrative. I called. What are you doing? Buying time, she said. They were going to run my answer either way. I gave them the blandest true sentence possible and choked the rest. Meanwhile, the investigator has the real story under oath. It felt like betrayal until it felt like breathing through your nose in a smoke-filled room. Not pleasant, but better than dying. At 3:22 a.m., my new smart lock sent a push. Wrong code entered 3 attempts. Then silence. Then footsteps on the hallway cam. A baseball cap and a jacket I recognized. Eli's varsity jacket from college. The one he kept for nostalgia or branding or both. Darren was at my place in 10 minutes with a wrench the size of his forearm. We watched the clip together. He didn't say, call the cops. He said, do you want to? I did. I filed a report. The officer asked if I had enemies. I almost laughed. I sent the video to Priya and the investigator. Priya replied, we're adding it to chain. Also, pack a go bag. This is escalation. I slept in Darren's spare room that night, next to a dismantled espresso machine and a calendar with Carburetor Week circled like a holiday. The board scheduled me for a second interview with the investigator. My lawyer, bless her, sat beside me while I walked through every log, every text, every tape. When we finished, she looked at the lead investigator and said, we expect preliminary findings within 2 weeks. Translation, stop slow walking. That afternoon, Meredith emailed me privately. If this is too bruising for you, the board would entertain an orderly transition. A polite drop your sword. I wrote a resignation letter. I printed it. I stared at it hard enough to bend paper with thought. Then I slid it into a folder labeled draft and took a photo for myself. I wanted to know I could end it if I needed to. I also wanted to know I had chosen not to yet. I did something else instead. I recorded a message to the team. Not a rant, not a clapback. A simple 2-minute video I sent to the interim committee to forward company-wide only if when the investigator confirmed tampering. Anchor was built on trust and hard problems. If I failed you, I'll own it. If others failed you by faking what we are, I'll protect you. Wait for the facts. Build a product. Don't let my story be your work. Priya forwarded it to the investigator with this note. If cleared, this goes first. Vantage, or someone doing their wet work, ran a leak package to a Gossip Y Substack. A handful of my DMs cherry-picked to make me sound smug, 3 old bug tracker comments where I was blunt about a missed deadline, 2019, and 1 Slack thread where I said ship it or kill it about a feature that later saved us. The narrative, hostile, ego-driven founder. Then a fake burner Twitter popped up at Anchor Whistle. First tweet, I watched him throw a chair. We have Herman Miller errands. I can barely scoot them. Samira texted, don't flail. I'm still verifying. Your enemies are noisy because their receipts are thin. Noisy still works. Downloads dipped. A candidate withdrew. A customer asked for a call to understand leadership stability. It felt like losing blood in teaspoons. Survivable until it isn't. Remember when I thought Priya was flipping? She wasn't. The person who flipped was the CFO. The investigator found that the SV changes were authorized from 2 devices. WeWork IP, Vantage, and a residential fiber IP that matched our CFO's home. When confronted, she lawyered up, then resigned for health reasons the same hour TechLedger published a follow-up praising swift leadership changes. Why her? 2 motives surfaced. 1, a quiet side letter deal promising her a retention bonus if the bridge closed. Spoiler, retention bonuses don't retain your soul. 2, she'd been passed over for a COO title last year and told me, I like being second chair. Turns out she liked being the conductor. The interim committee collapsed to Priya plus VP E&G Meredith appointed an interim acting CFO from finance who looked like he slept at the office because integrity doesn't own a couch. Priya called me at 11 p.m. You still think I sold you out? I laughed, ugly and relieved. I'll apologize in writing and in cake. Make it tres leches, she said. Tomorrow is going to be war. Meredith convened an emergency board session with outside counsel and an investigator present. I wasn't allowed in, still on leave, but someone, Renata, who had apparently befriended the receptionist over shared lunch breaks and a love of true crime, texted Kristen, who texted me. They're playing the Stairwell audio again. After a long silence, Meredith emailed me. The board has reviewed preliminary findings indicating material tampering with internal systems by Eli M. and CFO. Pending final report, both are terminated for cause. You remain on leave until final conclusions are issued. Please refrain from public comment. We appreciate your cooperation. I read it 3 times. My name wasn't cleared yet, but the guillotine had been wheeled to the right necks. I walked to Darren's shop and just stood there. He didn't ask. He handed me a socket wrench and pointed at an engine. We took something apart and put it back together. It sounded better after. Samira asked to meet, not to publish, to corroborate. When I arrived at the same Burn Toast Cafe, she already had a folder of her own. Anonymous source, she said. Engineer who left last year. Claims Eli pressured him to create a maintenance patch that wasn't basically the audit log overwrite we found. He thought it was weird, saved a copy in a personal repo, and then left when he couldn't sleep with it. She slid me a statement, sworn. The commit hash matched our diff. The engineer included a signal screenshot where Eli wrote, need it clean. No noise in the versions. Samira's face was careful. If this holds, this isn't a messy misunderstanding. It's intent. Are you running it? I asked. When I have the investigator sign off or a second source, she said. I'm not your sword. I'm your scale. That line will live in my skull rent-free. I got a calendar invite forwarded from a junior PR person who I guess forgot I was off systems but still CC'd on the distro pre-brief. Founder transition narrative, Anchor X Vantage. Time, Tuesday, 8 a.m. attendees. A Vantage Comms lead, TechLedger's friendly reporter, plus Eli from his personal email. So after getting tossed from a boardroom, Vance still wanted the story to land his way. They were going to frame it as founder steps aside for the good of the company and interim professionalization has stabilized operations. No mention of tampering. No mention of term sheet puppeteering. Just vibes and euphemisms. I forwarded the invite to the investigator and to Meredith with one sentence. If this runs, you will be complicit in defamation. No reply. At 7:50 a.m. on Tuesday, the meeting started without me. At 7:53, the friendly reporter tweeted, "Hearing big news coming from Anchor today. Founder era over." At 7:55, the tweet disappeared. At 7:56, TechLedger's editor posted, "We will not be running pre-briefs coordinated by parties under investigation. Stay tuned for verified reporting." At 7:57, Samira texted me a single emoji. At 8:01, Meredith called. "The pre-brief is canceled," she said, breath short. Outside counsel explained things to Vantage. Also, the investigator is moving up the timeline. Expect the report this week. Because they got spooked? I asked. Because they got recorded, she said. Turns out Samira had asked the friendly reporter for comment on the Stairwell audio and the WeWork IP logs before the pre-brief. The reporter, sensing a ship with holes, forwarded that to their editor. The editor, professional and tired of being played, shut down the pre-brief and told Vantage to take a long walk into a conflict of interest policy. I stood in my kitchen and let the adrenaline crawl out of my bones. I emailed the team, not the resignation, a different note. No hot takes from me. You deserve facts. An independent investigator is concluding their work. I'm waiting for that like everyone else. While we wait, ship durable things. Don't let anyone sell your work as their alibi. I'm proud of what you've built. I'm prouder of how you're carrying yourselves now. Priya sent back a single line. That's leadership. I cried into my coffee like a cliche and didn't care. A courier arrived at noon with a thin envelope from the investigator's firm. Preliminary findings, executive summary only, full report to the board. I opened it. Read it again. Substantial evidence of document tampering traced to credentials controlled by Eli M. and CFO with access from a Vantage leased IP. No evidence to support allegations of harassment cover-up. The cited case was investigated and closed by HR with outside counsel. Expense anomalies, Vegas, traced to unauthorized note overwrites. Original entries restored from raw logs. Evidence of attempted manipulation of MFA on the CEO account via unauthorized hardware key registration. Recommendation: immediate termination of implicated parties. Referral to law enforcement for potential computer fraud. Recommendation: restore CEO access pending board vote. Implement controls to prevent external interference. I stared at the last line, pending board vote. 5 minutes later, Meredith emailed, "Emergency board session tonight." I put on the same suit I wore to my first investor pitch. Darren tightened my tie like we were 18 and late to graduation. Priya texted, "No victory laps, just steps." Kristen sent, "Card index dividers plus fire." Renata, "Don't forget little people when you're king." I won't. I never will. I walked into the boardroom. Eli wasn't there. Vance wasn't there. The chair was. The vote was on the agenda.inv. Emergency board session. 8 directors dialed in or sat around that glass table, and I could see my reflection like a ghost hovering over all of them. Meredith chaired. Counsel summarized the investigator's findings. Calm, clinical, devastating. Eli, terminated for cause. CFO, terminated for cause. Vantage, cited as bad faith counterparty. My name, no findings of misconduct. Then came the vote. Shall me be restored to CO duties effective immediately? Meredith, yes. 2 independents, yes. 1 old VC who'd been skeptical since the Series A, abstain. Another, yes. 1 corporate rep, no. I'll let you guess whose portfolio company that was. Final count, 5-1-1. Motion passed. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, like I've been holding my breath for months and finally exhaled into a paper bag. Meredith ended with, "Welcome back. Guard your flanks." No applause. Just the click of the speakerphone ending the call. Walking back into Anchor as CEO, again, should have been a victory parade. Instead, it was quiet nods, cautious smiles, and Slack messages that vanished into ether because people weren't sure what was safe to say. Priya handed me my badge back. Careful with this. Feels like it's made of glass. The first thing I did, gather the engineers. I didn't give them a speech. I gave them receipts. The investigator's executive summary, sanitized for confidentiality, but with one sentence bolded. Allegations against the CEO are unsubstantiated, tampering traced to Eli M. and CFO. I said, you don't have to like me. You don't have to trust me yet. But you do deserve the truth. This is it. Silence. Then one engineer raised his hand and said, can we just ship features again? We laughed. That was the first laugh in weeks that didn't feel nervous. 3 days later, Eli resurfaced. On LinkedIn, of all places. A 1,200-word post titled My Side of the Story. Highlights. Toxic founder culture. I tried to professionalize Anchor, but was smeared. My mistake was trusting the wrong people. It ended with, I'll be telling my full story on a podcast next week. The comments were split. Some old classmates fawning. Some employees posting eyes emojis. Some VCs doing the lessons learned dance. Kaya DMDM. Inyo. Oxygen is what he wants. But then Darren sent me a screen grab. Eli in the comments accusing me of burning through investor trust and alienating my own family. Family? What did that mean? 10 minutes later, my mom called. Eli had apparently DM'd her. My mom told her I was spiraling and endangering employees. I nearly drove to his apartment. Darren blocked the door. No, you've already won. Don't let him drag you down to his basement. He was right. But God, it burned. The next twist wasn't from Eli. It was from Vantage. They filed a civil suit against Anchor. Breach of term sheet, reputational damages, etc. Legal spaghetti meant to bleed us with fees and headlines. TechLedger covered it within an hour. Anchor faces suit after founder turmoil. Meredith called me. This is their endgame. They know they lost the board. They want to poison the well, so no new investors touch us. I asked, do we fight or settle? She said, neither. We counter. Turns out the investigator had referred their findings to law enforcement. And one clause in the Vantage term sheet, the one Eli had signed, had a fraud carve-out, which meant if tampering was proven, Vantage owed us damages, not the other way around. The lawsuit wasn't a threat. It was a confession. Remember Samira, the reporter? She'd been steady, careful, refusing to run with half-baked scoops. Well, she finally published a monster piece. Title, Inside the Startup Coup That Failed. She had the Stairwell audio, redacted but damning. The WeWork IP trail. The resignation of the CFO. Interviews with engineers who corroborated the tampering. And the kicker, the anonymous former engineer with Eli's signal messages. She also included my 2-minute ship durable things video. Called it Measured. The piece trended #1 on tech Twitter for 48 hours. Eli tried to clap back on Medium. Nobody cared. The unexpected ally. The TechLedger reporter who'd run the hit pieces. He DM'd me. I was fed half-truths. I'll print corrections. You deserve better. Didn't expect that. But vindication sometimes comes from the most unlikely inbox. You'd think that was the end. It wasn't. Anchor survived, but scarred. 2 major hires withdrew. 1 customer churned. Half the board insisted on executive coaching for me. Translation, prove you're not the caricature they painted. My own sleep cycle was shredded beyond repair. But we also gained. 3 engineers who'd left came back. A quiet flood of candidates who messaged respect for how you handled that. Priya promoted to chief people officer. Darren finally let me buy him dinner without pretending it was just a pit stop. Victory, yes, but not clean. Never clean. Last Friday, the investigator released the final report. Board voted unanimously to clear my name. Anchor issued a press release. Independent review confirmed CEO exonerated. Tampering attributed to former executives. No exclamation marks. Just facts. I walked into the office, set my bag down, and for the first time in months, opened a Jira board without flinching. Kristen texted me, "That cinnamon roll you baked for your dad once? I expect one for the whole office." Renata texted, "Told you not to forget the little people." And Priya, bless her, just said, "Now the real work begins." She's right. But when I closed my laptop that night, I didn't feel hollow. I felt steady. Vindication wasn't fireworks. It was a quiet Friday evening, an inbox without landmines, and the knowledge that I'd walked through fire without burning down everything I loved. A week after the board cleared me, Eli tried one last move. He filed a wrongful termination claim with the State Labor Board. Said anchor retaliated against whistleblowing. Except the investigator's report was already in the record. The stairwell tape, the WeWork IP, the signal messages. His whistleblowing was actually whistle faking. His claim was dismissed in 48 hours. A clerk called it facially insufficient. That phrase will live in my head forever. Facially insufficient, like his whole performance had been makeup melting in the rain. Vantage? They went quiet. Their lawsuit evaporated after our counterclaim. One of their LPs pulled funds. Meredith told me, off the record, Vantage won't be raising another fund anytime soon. It wasn't just my fight. They'd done this play to other founders. I just happened to have enough stubbornness and allies with receipts to drag it into daylight. Sometimes the only victory is survival. Sometimes survival burns down your enemy by accident. I need to be honest. The toll wasn't just professional. My mom, who took Eli's calls early on, apologized with tears in her eyes. "I didn't know what to believe," she said. I told her it's okay. It wasn't okay, but it's better now. Darren? He never doubted. He joked, "Next time, open a bike shop instead of startup." He's not wrong. I carry scars now, insomnia, trust issues, a voice in my head that still asks, what if they believe him next time? But I also carry something heavier, proof that boundaries are worth defending, even when you bleed for them. 3 months later, at a low-key demo day, one of our engineers, someone who almost quit during the coup, presented a new feature. Afterward, she came up to me and said, "I stayed because you didn't scream back. You just waited for the truth." That hit me harder than any board vote. Because the truth is, I wanted to scream. I wanted to torch Eli, Vantage, every fake tweet. Instead, I trusted receipts. And receipts saved me. Anchor isn't a unicorn. Maybe it never will be. But it's alive. It's ours again. And every time I swipe my badge now, I remember how close I came to losing it all. I thought vindication would feel like fireworks. It doesn't. It feels like walking into a quiet office on a Monday, hearing keyboards clatter, and knowing no one is plotting to bury you. It feels like peace. And peace is the rarest product-market fit there is. Final verdict. AITAH for refusing to roll over when my best friend tried to stab me in the back? No, I wasn't the asshole. I was the founder who finally learned that trust without proof is charity, and proof without courage is useless. Now I have both, and I'm still standing.